There's a weird divide between those who are getting into podcast and like if you got a family to provide for, right? You got kids that are relying on you. You've got certain expectations of what's going to happen with that podcast. They're oftentimes out of alignment with reality. You might hurt yourself at a degree that you're not anticipating. You might publicly shame yourself and humiliate yourself in ways that you're not ready for the repercussions of. And that worries me as a healer of people. Like, I love to help people. I hate to see people run into that brick wall or fall off of that cliff. But if you don't have any natural consequences that are going to occur for just running with it and winging it and making it happen, and you're going to be honest with the world, go for it. Just do it. But there are uglies with podcasting. I'm curious, Adam, on your side, have you seen any uglies or am I wrong about that?
I can think of a few. One big one is starting it with the wrong, I guess, with not enough thought process behind having a podcast. And it doesn't mean that you don't have a show. It just doesn't mean that you're going to get listeners. And so people say, hey, I'm going to start a podcast because, and then fill in the blank. They want to make more money. They want to grow their business. They want to give back to the world. I'm going to start a podcast because I want this or that. And then they start the podcast, but they don't make all of the things in line with the reason that they started. So they have the idea, but then they shoot from the hip. They kind of just do whatever. And it reminds me right now of a fish like flopping around. They're there, but they're not really getting anywhere. It's not. It hadn't been planned out, and the issue happens where they get into having a podcast, and it ends up being where they are kind of their only listener because they didn't do some of the things right, which is super unfortunate, because if you want to make income with a podcast or an impact, whether it's this eye or that eye, then it's going to be quite difficult if you don't have any other listeners. And so, yes, they technically have a show, but I think that that's an unfortunate thing, is not launching it the right way, not getting in front of the right people, not knowing how to make everything congruent in the messaging, even the colors and the fonts maybe, but definitely the messaging, the people that you have on the podcast as guests, the questions that you ask should all fit with that one purpose. And a thing that people do, another thing is, because this goes along the same lines, but it's almost a second thing, whereas they think that they need to add value to everybody or to different people, where they say, I can work with this type of person and I can work with this type of person. They're completely opposite. So for example, I am an investor and I raise capital from people to buy more things. And I also could teach somebody how to invest the same way that I do. And if they have half of their information benefiting the person that could invest with them and half of their information benefiting the person that wants to do what they're doing, then for neither of those avatars are they fully adding value. They're just sometimes adding value to that person and sometimes adding value to the
I like what you said in the beginning. I don't necessarily like the last part because it reminds me of, well, that's what a heart surgeon does. So a heart surgeon has a team, and one person's job is to do something different than the other person's job. And so if they're guiding both of those individuals to help them on this heart surgery, no, neither person needs the same exact information as the other. So I think that goes back to more of a half glass empty view rather than a half glass full view of, I don't control what people pay out of my podcast. If I talk about two different math formulas for two different audiences and it blesses both lives to the complete capacity of what those people individually needed, then it's kind of like looking at LeBron James and saying, oh, wait a second. He should only be a basketball player. He can't possibly make all that money with Nike as well. And also open an I Promise school. We oftentimes, I like the quote. It's my own self-driven quote. I can have my cake. I can eat it too. And I can have a conveyor belt of cakes. Thank you, Richard Branson, for inspiring that. So I think there's just more room for the view of the abundance in that reality. But to go back to your point on the ugly aspect, I love your example a lot. That it is sad that the symptom that I see that I would define as ugly is twofold. One, the people who feel bad about their podcast. That feels ugly to me. It's like, if you feel bad for what you're doing and you feel bad for the results that you're getting, then unfortunately you're a victim of expectation. And expectation is the root of all heartache, William Shakespeare, right? So if you've got unfair, unrealistic expectations with yourself, then, and you feel bad about it and you're whining to people about how hard your podcast is and how awful life is because you don't have the views that you want, or you're self-deprecating because you feel like, you're second guessing yourself and all these gurus are telling you you're doing it wrong. I feel bad for that individual because that's an ugly way to feel about life. Then there's a client who I fired a couple years ago, and she got on the Sean Kelly show, and she had 500,000 plus followers on Instagram, and she wanted to run Facebook ads, and we started to notice more and more red flags. But it also came to our attention that she was going to conferences where they would take a year's worth of photos, specifically at that conference, to showcase their true lifestyle. There's no truth in that lifestyle. It was 4 days. You made it look like your entire year is awesome based in 4 days. You think there's something ethical about that? Like, I didn't need to directly challenge this individual, but it wasn't hard to give them their money back and to start moving away from them and realizing that, no, this person makes about a janitor's salary, claiming that they live this wonderful, amazing life, and they're a complete fake. They're cheating. They're lying to their audience, people who love them most, and yet they're an incredible liar. That's ugly. One, you can go to prison for it. Two, how do you sleep at night? Oh, she didn't. I remember. She said no. She just couldn't. She didn't like her life. She didn't like how things were going. She wondered who could fix it. You have to fix that. If you're going to be inauthentic and you're going to manipulate your audience, you're not going to enjoy life very much. I wouldn't.